This is the story of Sarah Williams, a 27-year-old teacher whose life would take a tragic and terrifying turn after an online connection turned deadly. Sarah Williams had always been a hopeful soul, full of optimism. A passionate teacher, she loved inspiring young minds and believed in the good in people. Her friends often described her as an old soul, a kind, thoughtful woman who loved hiking, reading, and volunteering in her free time. Sarah didn't have a huge social media presence, but she enjoyed connecting with friends and sharing her thoughts. Her life was simple yet fulfilling, until one fateful day when she crossed paths with Mark Thompson on Facebook. Mark's profile was like any other, at first glance, friendly, engaging, and warm. His photos depicted a man in his early 30s, with a kind smile and a passion for travel. His feed was filled with pictures from exotic locations, wildlife adventures, and casual selfies with animals he had encountered. Mark painted a picture of a man who lived life to the fullest, one who had an eye for beauty, photography, and charity work. He shared thoughtful posts about helping others, promoting positivity, and exploring the world. Intrigued by his posts, Sarah responded to a comment he left on one of her pictures. She had posted a photo of her hiking in the mountains, and Mark, it seemed, had an authentic admiration for her adventurous spirit. Their online exchanges quickly escalated. Mark complimented her work as a teacher, saying, "You're such a rare find, intelligent, beautiful, and kind-hearted." His words made Sarah blush. She had been single for some time, and though she had her doubts about meeting someone online, Mark's words were just the affirmation she had been longing for. As the weeks passed, their conversations deepened. What started as casual exchanges soon became more personal. Mark seemed to understand Sarah in ways no one else did. He listened to her hopes and fears, her dreams of seeing the world, and her frustrations with the pressures of her career. Sarah began to feel a connection, one she had never felt with anyone before. The invitation. After several weeks of constant messaging, Mark suggested that they meet in person. He proposed a weekend getaway to a charming hotel just outside the city, a place tucked away in the woods, far from the hustle and bustle of daily life. "We could spend the weekend relaxing, getting to know each other better. It'll be nice to get away for a while," he said in one of their late-night conversations. Sarah hesitated at first. She wasn't one to jump into anything too quickly, and meeting someone in person who she had only ever known online seemed like a huge leap. But Mark's words reassured her. His genuine tone and the kindness that had defined their interactions seemed to be the mark of a trustworthy person. Besides, he had been nothing but respectful, constantly complimenting her and showing a deep interest in her life. The weekend arrived, and Sarah found herself pacing nervously in her apartment as she prepared to leave. Mark picked her up in his car, and from the moment she got in, he was the perfect gentleman. He played her favorite music, cracked jokes to put her at ease, and made her feel like the most important person in the world. The long drive to the hotel felt like a smooth transition from the digital world to the real world. For the first time in a while, Sarah felt truly excited. When they arrived at the hotel, nestled in a quiet wooded area, Sarah marveled at the beauty of the surroundings. The hotel was quaint but elegant, its warm lights glowing in the distance as they approached. The lobby was cozy, with a roaring fireplace and soft music playing in the background. Mark checked them in and led her to their room. The evening felt perfect, a peaceful retreat from the chaos of everyday life. "This place is beautiful," Sarah said, looking around in awe. "Only the best for you," Mark replied with a charming smile. At that moment, everything seemed perfect. Sarah felt a sense of peace, unaware that her dream weekend was about to turn into a nightmare. The first evening was nothing out of the ordinary. After a pleasant dinner at the hotel restaurant, Mark suggested that they return to their room. Sarah, feeling a little tired and tense, did not know the danger that awaits her. She didn't know what seems to be a perfect getaway and companionship she has been praying for would lead to an unexpected twist. The night air was crisp, and the quiet serenity of the woods made everything feel serene. But as soon as they entered the room, something shifted. Mark's demeanor changed. His once warm smile transformed into something cold and distant. Sarah, trying to shake off the unease, set her purse on the bed and turned to him. "Is everything okay?" she asked, sensing the sudden tension. Mark didn't respond. Instead, he locked the door behind them. Sarah's heart began to race as the reality of the situation hit her. Something was terribly wrong. Panic set in as Mark advanced toward her. Holding a sharp knife, he looked like a character from a horror movie, his eyes no longer filled with affection but with something far darker. "What's going on?" Sarah asked, her voice shaking. She instinctively backed up, but Mark was faster. He grabbed her arm with unexpected strength, and in that moment, Sarah realized the horrifying truth. Mark was not who he claimed to be. His facade had cracked, revealing a monster beneath the surface. "What are you doing? Let me go!" Sarah screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the thick hotel walls. Mark pushed her onto the bed, his grip tightening. He had lured her there under false pretenses. Just like the other victims, he tied her to the bed, forcefully took advantage of her and ended her life with the sharp knife. The next morning, hotel staff found Sarah's lifeless body in the room. She had been brutally murdered. Her family was devastated, and the police quickly began their investigation. At first, they believed Sarah had been the victim of a random attack, but as they delved deeper into the case, they discovered a terrifying pattern. Sarah wasn't the first woman to meet a tragic end at the hands of Mark Thompson. Over the past 2 years, several women had disappeared after meeting a man online. All had been lured to different secluded hotels, under the guise of a weekend getaway. Each victim had been charmingly drawn into his web, trusting him before their lives were brutally cut short. Each the same pattern of tying them to the bed, then forcefully harassing them sexually before ending their lives. The detectives discovered that Mark had used Facebook and other social media platforms to create multiple fake personas. He targeted women who were lonely, vulnerable, or looking for companionship. He was a master manipulator, using his charm and the trust he gained online to isolate them from the real world. Once they were alone, in a secluded location, he would strike. As the investigation into Mark's background deepened, the detectives uncovered a disturbing history. Born into a broken home, where it was rumored that the father ended the mother's life during one of their numerous fights, until this day, they never heard of the father again. Mark's early life was filled with neglect and abuse. He lived with his maternal grandmother, who constantly reminded him of how his father killed her only daughter, who happens to be his mother. The neighbors labeled him a child of doom. His twisted fascination with control and violence became apparent in his teenage years, when he was caught torturing animals. These early signs of his sociopathic tendencies went unnoticed by those around him, and by the time he reached adulthood, he had perfected the art of manipulation. Mark's charm and intelligence allowed him to mask his true nature. He moved frequently, never staying in one place long enough to form lasting relationships. He worked odd jobs, always keeping a low profile. People who knew him described him as friendly but distant. He never allowed anyone to get too close. It wasn't until his late 20s that Mark began using social media to feed his dark desires. The internet provided him with an endless supply of victims, women he could control and destroy, one by one. He carefully crafted fake profiles to fit the interests and personalities of the women he targeted. And, as the police would soon discover, each murder was part of a carefully orchestrated plan. As the investigation intensified, detectives used digital forensics to track Mark's online activity. They traced his fake profiles, analyzed his chat logs, and pieced together the puzzle of his crimes. The breakthrough came when investigators found a common thread between the victims. Mark had befriended them online, established a deep emotional connection, and then lured them to different hotels in secluded environment. Detectives also uncovered chilling surveillance footage from the hotel showing Mark with the women. They issued a warrant for his arrest, but by the time they arrived at his last known address, he had vanished. Mark was on the run. The case gained national attention, and Sarah's family launched a campaign on social media to raise awareness of the dangers of online predators. The hashtag #StopTheFacebookSealKiller went viral, and people across the country shared the warning. Tips poured in, and one of them led the investigators to a small town where Mark had been spotted. After weeks of searching, a tip led the police to a remote cabin in the woods. Mark had been hiding there, using cash to avoid being traced. A SWAT team was dispatched, and after a tense standoff, Mark was captured. In his cabin, investigators found a chilling collection of trophies, photographs, jewelry, and other personal items taken from his victims. They also found a journal where he documented creepy details of his victims. He also wrote boldly in one of the pages, "They can never find me just like my father." The trial was a national spectacle, with families of the victims sharing their heartbreaking stories. The trial that followed was nothing short of harrowing. Survivors of Mark's manipulations, along with the families of his victims, bravely took the stand to share their stories. One survivor narrates how she escaped from Mark. She said it was God's intervention. On that particular day, Mark took her to one of the hotels. As he was unpacking, a blood-stained knife fell from his bag, but she pretended that she didn't see it. She tricked Mark to go and buy her some medicines as she was feeling sick. Immediately he left. She escaped, and he never called her but blocked her on all social media platforms. Sarah's mother, holding up a picture of her daughter, made a powerful statement that echoed throughout the courtroom. "You took her future, but you won't take her voice. Sarah's story will save others. Her death won't be in vain." As the evidence mounted, Mark's chilling journals, the recovered trophies, the testimonies of his victims, it became clear that he was a calculating and remorseless killer. Mark showed no remorse, even as the weight of his crimes pressed down on him. The courtroom, filled with grief-stricken families and advocates for victims, watched as the jury deliberated. Mark was found guilty on all charges, and the judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentence was a bittersweet victory for those who had suffered at his hands, knowing that, though justice had been served, it could never undo the damage he had caused. Sarah's tragic death became a stark and painful reminder for parents everywhere. Her story wasn't just another headline. It was a wake-up call that could save countless lives. Her parents, devastated by the loss of their beloved daughter, turned their grief into a powerful mission, to warn others about the hidden dangers of meeting online friends. They began sharing Sarah's story with raw honesty, hoping to reach families and children who might be unaware of the risks lurking behind friendly messages and picture-perfect profiles. "We don't want another family to go through what we've endured," Sarah's mother tearfully explained. "We want parents to talk to their children, to teach them about the dangers of trusting strangers they meet online." The couple emphasized how easily Sarah was drawn in by the charm and carefully crafted lies of someone she thought she could trust, and how she could have been saved if she had told her parents before going to meet her killer. They highlighted the importance of open communication between parents and children, encouraging them to question and verify online relationships before meeting anyone in person. "It's not about scaring them," Sarah's father said. "It's about empowering them to protect themselves."